Enjoying this beautiful weather we have. For 10 minutes.
Morning was ugly.
Morning was cold. Sun came out this afternoon, started getting nice. We got snow. It's crazy.
Did you ever want to give it 10 months? Didn't get one.
Huge amounts.
I'm smart.
Are you done? Tell you what, I get somebody else stuff. I got copies here. I've got copies. So unless somebody else needs it. Thanks, so.
Where are you reading?
You just handed it to me. You gave it to me.
Glad that it didn't run as long as the meeting. I think he has all of them.
Yeah, I got it all.
He did great.
We did not hear from you.
These are all the only four. Plus the meeting with Steve's and Alex's, but Wes is the only supportive. Alex is.
Should we go ahead and start, Sally? Okay, why don't we go ahead and start, call the meeting to order. And as far as roll call, do we need to actually take it, or you have
We have it.
everybody signed in? Hopefully Wes will get here. So the first thing on the agenda is approval of the March 9th, 2022 meeting minutes. Everybody had a chance to review the minutes? Is there any comments or corrections we had? If not, I'll look for a motion to approve.
Make a motion.
Thank you, Marvin. I need a second. Earl, thank you. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Okay, well, let's go on to number 2, the review of the pilot area tax sales properties. So Sally, Logan, you want to jump on that?
Okay, we will go ahead and review the pilot area tax sale property, something that the Board of Trustees requested, I believe, at the January or February meeting. And we had it on our agenda to cover at the March meeting. Unfortunately, we ran out of time. We didn't have the majority of the board there at that time, so we decided to defer this item to this meeting. As you might remember, the tax sale property were provided to us on a list by Sedgwick County. And since then, they've started updating us daily on which properties have actually been redeemed. So we're able to add a current listing of properties that might be for tax sale in this year's tax sale. And I actually have this because I've shared it on the screen. So share from the iPhone. About that. If you might remember, there are 2 different pilot areas that the city has prioritized for the Affordable Housing Fund. That's our cluster of Wichita Housing Authority homes and the quarter-mile buffer around the North Minnesota, Pyatt, and Ash area, and the Haskell and St. Clair area down south. So we have a cluster and a priority area in District 1 and then District 4. This this map just shows you our Wichita Housing Authority properties and then that quarter-mile buffer. And again, we're focusing on this top cluster and then this cluster down. This is a map that was provided to us by the planning department. They actually took all of the raw data related to the tax sale properties that were either 4 years delinquent, which if you might remember, those are going to be the ones that are coming up for tax sale if they're not redeemed in this year's current tax sale. And then they've also mapped for us properties that are 3 years delinquent. So these are properties that could have the potential of coming up for tax sale if that 4th year also goes unpaid in 2023. That would be considered the 2022 tax sale. And so the first area that we looked at was the Minnesota Ash and Playa area. What the planning department actually did for us is they looked at a 1/4 mile buffer around this pilot area and then pulled out which properties were on the tax sale listing. And so for this pilot, there were actually only 3 properties, and you see that we've kind of showed them here on a map in the red pinpoints. Now the blue pinpoints on this map are actually the Wichita Housing Authority homes. See, we have a substantial cluster of homes here, and then there were 3 at the time they did their analysis that were going to be potentially coming up for sale on the tax sale. And then again, I just kind of zoomed in a little bit closer on the map that planning provided to show you where those properties are. So there were 3 properties. The first one we'll look at is the 2619 North Madison. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on these because unfortunately all of the properties that we looked at have since been redeemed, but this will give you a good idea of the condition of the properties that we might be able to acquire through tax sale. So the back taxes are going to be the first line that you see. So this property at the time owed about $1,800. The condition was deemed to be fair at an appraisal of $27,000. And then there's actually Wichita Housing Authority home that is to the south of that property. You can see our WHA home that's boarded up property here. We wanted to give you an idea of what the street looked like, so we took pictures of the neighboring houses. So that kind of just that first, but
Logan, the house is boarded up, is owned by the city now.
that's correct.
It just hasn't been repaired or.
We have boarded. So as Wichita Housing Authority homes are vacant, we haven't refilled those in anticipation of repositioning public housing portfolio. And so we've actually boarded this unit up to protect the property as we see people going into the property, vandalizing, stealing HVAC units.
Sally, could you, when you say Wichita Housing Authority, what does that mean?
The Housing Authority is made up of our public housing program and then our Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher program. So you might hear me call the properties WHA properties or public housing properties, but this is just public housing stock that the city owns and manages.
What restrictions does it? Is there a reason like those couldn't be transferred into the land bank? Things can get taken care of, or the city?
Lots and lots of red tape to get them converted, but we're working on that through the Affordable Housing Fund, turning these over through a developer. There's no advantage to rolling them through the land bank, because if you remember, the land bank's power is to eliminate back taxes, clear title issues. That's not this case. Where these are challenging is our applications to HUD, for HUD to allow us to sell them.
So it's controlled by HUD, not controlled by the city. It's a
Oh,
federal government
they have a declaration
restrictions.
of restriction on it. Yeah,
Depends on where the money came from to buy the houses as
which
to
was HUD.
what rules you have to follow. So
Correct.
Because when I look at that, those are the ones that are going to be done on it. The other ones, every year is going to come back up, and we're wasting our time trying to figure out if it's going to go on.
Oh, you mean the tax foreclosure ones? Yeah, I mean, it was really,
Not wasting time, but
I get it too, but we went out, we took a look at the ones here and then to have them all redeemed was like, okay. We started down this path, but yeah. And this is why we're really excited. So those, WHA homes, the ability to use the new ARPA Affordable Housing Fund and leverage those 2 activities. So where developers can come in, bid on properties to rehab them and then make them available for affordable home ownership or affordable rental.
saying that that's separate from,
The tax foreclosure issue, yes.
from the land bank being, it doesn't.
Yeah, there's just no advantage to rolling them through the land bank. The land bank couldn't support even just the grounds maintenance to turn these 352 properties over to the land bank because they have no.
But they could afford to take 3 or 4, get them, like, how long has that been that way?
That particular unit could be a month, could be 2 years.
Is there, I don't mean to, I'm trying to ask these questions with learning, so here, but does it not make sense that if the land bank do something quicker than 2 years, that we pull some of those things into it? Is it because it's taking 2 years because of the red tape?
There was an attempt to do a RAD conversion to have the city rehabilitate all of the properties. They were unable to secure the financing that was necessary. Even HUD wouldn't issue a loan on it. And so a couple of years went into that process, you can imagine, of putting together that, because they did receive an allocation of 4% tax credits, couldn't get an investor to purchase the tax credits. So we've been going through a lot of that. And we lost some time due to COVID. At this point, we are at the point where we are looking and starting the applications to submit to HUD for them to allow us to divest of the properties in conjunction with the Affordable Housing Fund, because that brought in resources that are going to help nonprofit or for-profit developers come in and have some resources, because there is definitely a gap. There's a gap between what the property's worth, what it's going to take to rehab, and what it'll sell for. And so the affordable.
Get prices for rehabbing like this particular house. Prices in the file for how much.
There is, but now those are 18 months old, and you can imagine the costs have increased significantly. So from our architect, the average was about $40,000 worth on each of the properties. Some of them needing 10, some of them needing 90. Right? So.
If you had like your Mennonite housing or Habitat for Humanity where
We expect they're going to be the ones knocking at the door.
they're occupied, that's a different
We need to rebid.
financing. Doesn't it seem like you could spin some of those off to do that for home ownership?
That's exactly what we're doing. You hit the nail on the head. So once we issue the RFPs that are going to go out for putting bids on particular properties and requesting affordable housing funds and possibly property vouchers, that's exactly where we're going.
You might explain a little more about the approval that you got yesterday for $5 million is basically to go in these 300 and some houses that are in the housing authority, to go in and rehab those houses for either rental or sale, owner occupied, right?
It will assist in that matter. This is not a case where we're going to, if we had enough money to be able to go in and rehab them all, we would have done that. So that's why breaking them down and using multiple developers and multiple strategies, they're going to have to come with money. It is not just, oh, the city's going to pay me to buy them, the city's going to pay me to rehab them, and then I'm going to sell them and I'm going to keep the profits. That is not how this is really going to go down. What the city's going to be able to do is to be able to provide whatever subsidy is needed for that gap between the purchase price of the property, which one nice thing is that purchase price, which is going to be at market rate, because it's going to require that unless the developer wants to sit there and manage a program for 30 years, because that's what it takes if you sell it for $1 less than it's appraised for. But that funding for that purchase comes back into the Affordable Housing Fund. That's what we're requesting. They'll be able to apply for subsidy that will help fill the gap between the price, the rehab, and the sales price. Because we know many of these don't appraise where we need them to appraise.
Well, if you had a nonprofit that was wanting as the developer will come in different types of for-profit and nonprofit, correct?
Right. The strongest applications, as we presented to council yesterday, are going to be applications that have a holistic approach, that are preparing people for home ownership, that are providing those services that are necessary, maybe already have, relationships with banks or, getting people mortgaged. 'Cause that's half the challenge too. But yeah, that's exactly where we're headed with this.
These are financed by HUD and so
These
individually.
There is a declaration of trust on every property from HUD. Yes.
Market value generally is what they have loaned against it, or is it a lot? Is there-
These go back to the 70s and 80s. So no, we actually have to pay for an appraisal on every property.
And that's already been done though, right?
No, not the appraisal. Not the appraisal. And that's where I talked about jumping through the hoops. So we have environmental reviews on every property, plans and specs, because we were at the point where we were trying to raise the capital. The environmental reviews all have to be updated because they're more than a year old. Huge expense. The first 37 properties is 66 grand, just an environmental review.
Part of that is because they're so scattered. I don't pay the environmental cluster to be anywhere close to that. Those properties are scattered across. When we get to the map,
But then we also have to pay for the appraisal.
Because sometimes does it not make it feasible if you got to pay market value, but if you could cover the debt and any past due bills to a nonprofit, wouldn't that make maybe sense?
Well, but HUD's gonna require them to sell them at market.
At market value.
if we sell them less than market value, there's a long-term affordability restriction of 30 years.
You have to sell them at market value. Then what you can do though, is you may be able to provide them some funds to help them do the rehab. So that's where it offsets the market value side. As the property sits today, it's say a $40,000 piece of property. I'm gonna need to put 25 into it to make it sellable.
Right.
Well, maybe the city can help you with 10 or 15 to fill the gap, and then maybe ultimately you sell it for 40.
So HUD, they don't care. They're gonna say, we don't have it vacant, look like this,
Appraisals would be as is.
instead of
So it'd be like fair market.
our money back.
No.
They're,
No. HUD would like to see the properties put back into use, yes.
I was just saying, so to HUD, I'm just trying to think how HUD's thinking about it. Rather have it sit and look like this, then at least get their money back. They want to have full market value back. They're not negotiable, saying, we could get rid of 20 of your units here this year if you take a discount on it. Then that makes it more affordable for a private individual for his own home to purchase it.
Mind you, you're talking about a home that the fair market value is 40 grand right now.
But you got to put 25 in.
65 grand,
It's not worth 65.
is it?
But you,
Is it though? Maybe.
The thing is-
65 is not hard to hit.
65 should be what it's worth, fully remodeled or whatever, ready for the market. That's not 65 today. That's the 40. So there is some opportunity for a little bit of profit. Does that money go back to HUD? The 40,000 you pay for it, it stays here.
Our request is for it to go back into the Affordable Housing Fund. So HUD does have a mandate that every dollar that we receive on those then be used for an affordable housing. Yes. Now, our request to them is to go back into the fund rather than creating a whole nother program that takes the funding from the sales proceeds.
So the key is to get a reasonable market value as is. Reasonable, yeah. And then come up with what the improvements are going to be, how much is that going to cost, and how's that going to compare to the market value once improved? And if there's a gap in there, then that's when the city comes in with this $5 million to help offset that gap. So that house becomes an occupied property, whether it's a rental property or a sold owner occupied property. Does that make sense?
Makes sense, but it doesn't make sense.
Well, it's going to be every house, as you well know, every house is going to be a different story depending upon the condition of the house and the location of the house. That's interesting. We get to talk about that, understand that, because it's one of the properties that we had a tax issue.
Right next door was one of the properties that was it.
Thank you for that explanation. But I think we need to understand that.
Yeah.
And it also helps with, when you have those homes around the homes that are being valued, the neighborhood substantially
Yeah, and that was part of the reason why we were looking at possible tax foreclosures in that quarter-mile area around those, because we were saying, how many different activities can we leverage to try and bring up the whole neighborhood?
I'll just go over the rest of these pretty quickly because I mentioned before, all of these properties that were. There's another one, it's 2450 North Minnesota. It's pretty interesting because as you see, there's another vacant boarded up house just to the south. And so when looking at this property, it was discovered that that property is currently years behind. So this is one that can possibly come up for tax closure next year. Lot just to the south of that property. Now that lot is actually up to date on its taxes, but it's owned by an individual that lives in the block just north.
Interesting on that one is you can see the apron, means there was a house there at some, means you probably have service lines already, which could be a huge benefit to trying to build a replacement house on that lot.
And then the last one is 2607 North Green. This one's a little bit further to the east of that main cluster. It's also since been redeemed in pretty decent shape. To appraise just over $30,000. Then it backs up to the cluster, in Wichita. The homes next to this home were in pretty good condition. You can tell that the neighbor to the south had recently gotten a photo meeting. This is the view of the Wichita Housing Authority home that backs up to that property. The next pilot that we looked at was that cluster down south, and we're looking at this area. Unfortunately, there were no properties within a quarter mile, so planning extended their search to 3/10 of a mile. When they did that, property. One was a commercial property that you can see here. It's also since been redeemed. We didn't really see this as a great fit for a property that the land bank might want to pursue. Pretty hefty back taxes owed and occupied property, as you saw. The other property is right up next to South Meridian Avenue, just southwest of the cluster. It's also been redeemed. You can tell there's some issues with it in terms of the siding. The fence was falling down. This is definitely a rental property. It's owned by a LLC that owns quite a few other rental properties. There's a rear view of the property and then a view west from Meridian. And then just kind of to give you an idea of the assessed value of the homes in each of those clusters. The first cluster that we talked about, the Minnesota, Paya, and Nash, those 46 homes, Wichita Housing Authority homes that were in that area, just under $2 million assessed value. And then Haskell and St. Clair, 23 homes with an assessed value of even higher, just over $2 million.
And of all those homes, how many are vacant?
I know we have about half of our 352 homes that are vacant currently. I don't know specifically what the occupancy rate for both of those pilot areas is, but overall we have about 170.
Yeah, 167 are occupied. As of today, there'll probably be 165 because we got a few skids.
So most of them are boarded up.
Yes.
So in actuality, we're bringing our own value down to our own area. That's what we're trying to bring up the
In the
value.
meantime,
Because that's really a cause of the appraisers are going in and people and seeing the boarded up houses, and it causes the value of the neighborhood down. So obviously.
that's why we want to turn that around.
It's been really tough over the last 3 years that we've been doing this process because we think we were getting close to financing and then it would fall through, and then it just happened over and over, and then the pandemic. But the last thing that the housing authority wanted to do was move families into those homes, knowing that the long-term plan for them was to reposition and not have them be public housing.
The key is getting those houses turned around as fast as possible. You say that RFPs are gonna be going out
This summer.
anytime this
This
summer.
summer.
Yeah,
We
early.
figure by the time we get through the HUD red tape,
As I mentioned at the start of the presentation, we have a good relationship with the county treasurer's office, and so the individual that works in that department, she actually emails every single day, gives an update on whether or not properties have been redeemed off of the tax sale listing. And so what we've been able to do is actually map out which properties are still possibly going to be available for tax sale. And so we've actually mapped those out. So I know
Get access to that link. Is that something we could have?
not this specific one, because this also has all of our public housing properties and includes occupancy information on them. But I think we could definitely make a screenshot of this available and maybe send updates as properties are removed to tax value. So the color differences on this map, the properties in yellow, these actually have structures on the properties. The ones in orange, these are just parcels. So as you can see, there's a pretty significant cluster of properties that are for possible tax foreclosure in District 1, as well as another significant cluster here in the south central neighborhood of Wichita. Some of these are primary commercial areas. So in terms of what we can do with the land bank currently, I don't know that they would be good options. It also would be worthwhile to go ahead and take properties that are outside of the established central area off the map, but I wanted to give you guys a holistic view of what the tax sale possibly would look like now. There are 124 properties left. And keep in mind, they started with, I think it was like 382. And I didn't map the ones outside of Wichita, but there are about 20 outside of Wichita that are still up for possible tax.
Say those are all 2 years past due.
These are all 4 years past due
4 years.
that have not been redeemed.
To redeem, they only have to pay 1 year.
And it's interesting when they send their redemption report, they do show you how much was paid, and it's just that 4th year. Nobody's really paying off the entire balance.
Is that 4-year, what governs that?
State statute.
A statute?
According to our Sedgwick County folks.
Yes, there's pros and cons, but one side of it seems like the ability to take over properties is extremely hard. Is that something that you look at trying to change the state statute and work at it from that perspective and say,
Possibly.
you gotta do something different? I would think every city deals with that same issue, and so that's something that we should strive to do.
I'll check into that. Like to, I think that's a good question.
It seems like that we keep bumping up against that wall of we're limited, we can't do it. We spend a ton of time
Right.
doing appraisals,
Tapping it and driving out and checking it out.
discussion.
It's gone.
We're just banging our head against the wall and wondering why we should be one of the key issues, I think.
And, you know, it's interesting that there's so many clustered in certain neighborhoods. That's why the neighborhoods have challenges. They aren't paying their taxes and also not taking care of properties.
Yeah. And like Jerome says, then we go in and we board them up, and that makes it even worse. And then they can run down even worse because nobody's in it. And kind of our own demise.
I'll do some research, see if I can get some answers. Might talk to the city. Thanks about that too, so.
Additionally, there is a mechanism within the state statute that allows local governments or like cities to be able to bypass the tax sale process. And that would be something that we hope to start discussions with Sedgwick County Department. Because as we know, like, for example, Pittsburgh has the land bank, and at some point in their tax foreclosure process, all of those go directly to the land bank. And now, obviously, that's not what we want. But if we have the ability to pick out, some properties that we've identified to have low title risk issues, and then absorb those without having to go through the process of the tax sale, which is pretty cumbersome. I mean, up until the day before the tax sale, properties can be used. We could be spinning our wheels trying to do all of the research, and then still not even be able to walk away with a property after that tax sale. And additionally, the tax sale only happens once a year, and you only know about the tax sale up to 30 days before. So it just makes it kind of tough.
I think we need to find out what the county's role is, what their policies and procedures are, what the state statute, what we're limited by, and then
In our discussion with the county too, they didn't believe there was a mechanism to bypass the tax sale. And we were like, wait, being done in Pittsburgh, right? And then Logan actually found
December.
the citations where,
I just purchased 2 properties recently, about a month ago, and the gentleman bought them at a tax sale. Went to Security First Title. He bought it 10 years ago, 2010. It's only that. He had to go back to the old owner, go find him, go find his ex-wife, get him to sign all the papers again, do a quick claim deed over to him from the old owner from 10 years ago because Security First Title wouldn't issue the title policy to me. That was paying cash.
we hear those nightmare stories all the time on tax sales.
So unfortunately, even getting the property, there's gonna be some title.
but if it goes to a tax sale, there shouldn't be a title issue.
Oh, there are.
I'm
Yes,
telling you, he had the deed.
yes.
So we're still running into the problem where the title company wouldn't issue a
Title.
title policy to me for the properties that I wanted to buy, even though they bought them at the tax sale in 2010. He had to go find the old owner and the ex-wife, and it just happened to be, he had their phone number. He found them and went and tracked them down because he really sell them. So he did it. He took care of all that. He got it to and he had to go get them notarized too. Take them to the thing, the ex-wife and the.
And if they had passed away, then you're finding all their errors.
Exactly, then, yes.
So, yeah.
I guess do a little research on how that works and how do we clean that up, because that's a killer, I think.
The county does do some preliminary checks to get them to a certain point, but even then, they told us on the call that we had with them that they can't guarantee that you're gonna be able to secure title after.
I guess I was always under the impression once it goes to a tax sale, that title is free and clear.
Oh.
That's what I thought too. You're
Well-
not really- he didn't understand it. It's like, how can that be?
And our discussions with other land banks, that's their number one headache.
Okay,
So I thought that the tax sale would be the last. I personally feel like there should be a high-risk title company, just like the pay loan industry, where you're paying, that they can absorb the risk for these particular.
Securities title stopped doing preliminary too now. So even if you wanted to purchase one, you get it off the list. If I take it to security, they won't even do a preliminary search on it anymore for you. Because they used to be able to check it to see if it had liens and stuff. They won't even touch it or if it's in, if you even preliminary.
is that because they've done so many preliminaries, never got a final policy on it, or what? Okay.
You'd have to ask Craig about that.
We just wanted you guys to be aware that an up-to-date list of what properties to go for tax sale. But we also wanted just to educate you on the obstacles that do persist with possibly pursuing the option.
I would say you've achieved your goal of educating us on issues. The next item is a review of the bylaws and administrative policy. I believe everybody got a copy of the bylaws and administrative policy. The only thing I noticed in the bylaws on page 5, section 2, there was a blank, and that blank needs to be filled in with the program coordinator or designee shall prepare notice of meeting. And a little bit farther down in the paragraph, also program coordinator or designee no later than noon, 12, or as advising them of any items to go on the agenda. So I would say those are the only 2 holes that I saw that we needed to complete. And if those are complete, I think we're ready to vote and approve both the bylaws and the administrative policy for the land bank. Any questions or comments on that? I know, Jeff, you were on the line. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, I appreciate that. Yeah, when these were drafted, we had no idea at the time who would be doing that. So the blanks have stayed in place as this continues to evolve. The bylaws for everybody is to let you know is that's how the committee should run. If you have any questions on whether we can do something or not, or how it's done, absent some kind of Robert's Rules of Order question, the bylaws are what you turn to. I just wanted to point out the section on conflicts of interest that's a little bit different than some committees, but this, to keep the integrity of this organization, is be aware that, you know, if you have anything that could directly involve you, typically what happens if there's a case that comes up or you're unsure about it, you can ask myself or any staff member, and we'll try to advise you whether that appears, you know, is a conflict, or I kind of lean a little conservatively saying if there appears to be a conflict, I'd kind of stay out of it. But that's what's important. The administrative policy, when I put that together, it doesn't talk about procedures because we're still kind of working on the forms and processes that we're going to go through. But I did what most good attorneys do is I found about 10 or 15 different policies from around the country and plagiarized this with the best stuff that I could find. So, you know, this is designed to be kind of what your guiding principles are when you're looking at an application or what you're wanting to do with a given area. Sally and her staff, like in the earlier presentations, it was great. They, you know, covered a lot of these kind of things as well. And as we go along, you know, if there's a question, that's where you'd look back and determine, you know, does this fall within the goals and of the land bank? And if there's any questions on any part of it, or these are not static documents, if there's a change at all, you know, let us know and we can incorporate those.
Jeff, I have a question. This is Logan.
Sure.
So should we take out anything related to procedures on the policy document? Because it says administrative policy and procedure guidelines. Maybe we just take out anything related.
Yeah, that should have been. That's kind of, I think, where the drafts, I don't know which one got put into the deal or not, because basically it was becoming too difficult. We didn't know if we were going to have a land bank manager. We didn't know exactly what was going to happen, who's going to run it, which department. So the procedures in question were a little bit too much. So this should simply be administrative policy for the land bank, and we will work on as the forms are developed and we keep going. We'll work on a, you know, I have started a little bit, but as this evolves, we'll get a formal procedure, you know, which is flow diagrams and other things as far as how things will work when a property is introduced for consideration by the land bank.
And Jeff, do we need to get these policies adopted by the city council as well?
No, you do not. These are simply just approval by you guys. The ordinance is what it establishes, and that's what's approved by council, but the bylaws and administrative policies are just your internal operating guidelines and procedures.
That was my question on page 1 of the policy. Do we delete the third and fourth sentence there that it says it's been approved by the board of trustees? Well, I guess you'd have the third sentence was approved and adopted by board of trustees, and next sentence says city council. We don't want that.
Yeah, you'd take that out. I'll go back through these again, and I do apologize. This is probably a year and a half ago that I kind of started putting these together. And so, and then it just became so liquid that I didn't sit back every day and keep amending something. So I'll go back through these again and delete anything that references the city council's approval and add those program administrator in those blanks in the bylaws.
Yeah,
like
now
I said,
also, up on page 6, we have a treasurer and a secretary position.
Yes,
Do you
we
think
don't
those
have
are,
it.
are they
I'm sorry.
needed? Are they needed?
They're in the version I have. If they're not showing up on the one you guys are looking at, again, I'm sorry, I will make sure they're there. Typically what happens is, if we're kind of mirroring like Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, the secretary is, someone from the planning department. We didn't know which department would be that. If we do want to appoint a secretary, we can do that. The treasurer, this is going to be kind of an interesting position because they're really going to be somebody that's just going to be in charge of, if we need a title commitment, they'll be the ones that will help with the request. That probably, because it's going to be coming from city who's managing the funds, that's probably going to be a staff person. We don't necessarily need a per se treasurer, but somebody will have to make an accounting of like, here's how much money we have. This is what we spent this month, and go through and do those breakdowns, because we do have to do an annual report to the city council every year of our budgets.
Yeah, so shouldn't the treasurer and the secretary both be basically employees?
It would probably be a lot simpler. They
Yes.
could almost be the same person if you want. And I'll make sure the language is in there appropriately. Like I said, 2 months ago, I didn't know Sally's department would be kind of having such a principal role in this. So sorry for some of these warts that are in the documents.
Do the bylaws permit that? Staff,
They can, yes,
I don't think that would.
Yeah, section 3, page 2.
right.
Measured item.
Well, Jeff, why don't you go through these one more time? Any
Okay.
other comments or thoughts? And let's plan on approving these next month. Let's go through them again, send them out to everybody so we can review them before meeting, and just make sure we're consistent based on day. I think the ones I have are all dated April 9th, 2021. So you're right, Jeff. It's been about a year.
Yeah. I will get these revised very quickly and get them to Logan so they can be sent out. I do appreciate, I was anticipating some conversation and suggestions or changes or whatever, and then making all of those and presenting more of a final draft for the final approval of the board. So by next month, you guys will have these, and I'll get them to the point where you can get them early enough to review them before the meeting.
I think about 85% of it's just fine. It's that other 15 just needs a tweak based upon
Yep.
the direction we went. So thank you, Jeff, for all you've done on that.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you.
As I said, we'll wait for revisions from Jeff and Logan, and then we'll discuss and hopefully get them all approved next month. Any other business or points of discussion? I think this discussion was very good today. It's an education process. I would love to probably have more discussion on what's in some of these areas and what housing plan is. Valley, as far as, how does it affect the whole community, basically? And then how is it going to affect what we do from the land bank side? Because there's so many pieces and parts, and they're all moving. And I personally feel like I need to understand it better before we can make any recommendations. Does everybody else feel the same way? I mean, I know Jerome, you live in the middle of it some of the time, but you also have a lot of practical knowledge that we need to know about.
It's frustrating, like he was saying, the stuff that, like she was saying about 40,000 for redoing this house. Some of these, it seems crazy, but
Those are bids from local contractors.
yeah, and I understand. It's just that some of these local contractors are trying to, they see the city of Wichita.
You also take into consideration the cost of labor, the materials have skyrocketed, and it's going up again.
The timing is is challenging.
Yeah, so
Although,
they're trying to project and cover themselves.
there is some relief, prices are going down, or interest rates are going up. And things are lumber futures are starting to drop. I just like to Star Lumber. It's starting slow, so maybe that will help us. So got a long ways to go. The appraisals is a whole nother story because you're saying we have to get appraisals on 300 houses. Is that right?
Yeah, we're working with the city's real estate office.
That's a long task.
We'll be
We're doing them in groups,
Didn't we end up doing those, though, just a while back? I mean,
not appraisals, no.
okay.
We had to do the capital needs assessment, the environmental reviews, the,
I mean, the paperwork, we could have built a house for the paperwork. Crazy.
Do you have a strategic plan on how you're going to dispose those properties? Is there a, if so, I'd like to see what that strategic plan is.
so that's really the affordable housing plan is, if that got approved by council yesterday, is our strategy for those, for the disposal. The
Okay,
majority,
their strategy is there.
Well,
council approves everything we do, yeah.
can you send that out to everybody, Logan? Let's get that out.
Because I feel like we need to get a strategic plan as well. It sounds to me like the only things that we can deal with is tax foreclosures in a way.
Or anybody who wants to donate a property, or if there are properties that the land bank would want to acquire.
Need to,
It's just not a big.
You can find an area.
Properties.
because it looks overall, maybe trying to buy 170, people look at 170 properties, but if we have an area that we designated kind of 2 areas.
Oh, no, the plan is actually the 2 are just the first 2.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. We talked once about trying to create a community that's like rock the block.
Mhm.
We have a purpose, not just getting rid of the property. I mean, that's one way to do it, or is to plan and try to create a community in that disposition.
That's that holistic,
And that's what
that's that holistic approach where they're looking at what are the resources in the neighborhood, what's needed as far as down payment assistance or other items where, yeah. And that's part of the reason why we actually chose the north as one of the pilot areas for sure. Simply.
So Sally, explain. So we look at that northeast pilot area.
Yeah.
And we identify that there's going to be so many of those houses that we're going to want to get rehabbed and sold. We also identify any houses that are potential foreclosure, tax foreclosure properties. What else do we identify? Other houses that maybe need improvements?
Homeowners, yes, homeowner
Issues.
repair.
So the thought is we continue to dig into this northeast area that we've sort of identified as what we want to focus on. Once we have a better understanding of what's actually there, then we can start talking about, okay, does it make sense to do the RFPs for rehab? That's not our decision, but our decision is trying to figure out how do we get all the different programs to work together. And as a land bank, how do we complement that? At least that's the way I understand it.
What about the homes that are due for demolition, coding department?
Oh, so, yeah, the code enforcement, the thought there, it would only really be an education similar. They can't go out and propose and like, I'm going to condemn this house and then I'm going to try and pressure you to turn it over to the land bank. One of the resources that the neighborhood inspectors could use in a condemnation case is you don't have the resources to deal with this. An avenue may be homeowner repair program, or an avenue may be, hey, if you're interested, you might consider donating to the land bank, because then it clears all your back taxes.
And that's another avenue.
And I think one thing they talked about at the last month's meeting was the need to have some type of intermediary. So if you can go to this group and then that group might then recommend, hey, you might want to consider donating this property to the land bank. And they talked about possibly the Realtors Association maybe serving in that capacity if they were interested, which I believe they are. She just walked out.
Yes, because the last thing they need is it looking like the city's trying to specifically condemn properties to be able to turn it over to their land bank, which is not the goal. Actually, the first goal would be to get the owner in compliance. And we agree too. My bank doesn't want to take it. If the existing owner can get it in compliance, that's a win-win. So definitely. The only other thing I thought we might just quickly is, does this meeting time, it seems like we're really struggling for attendance. So I don't know if this meeting time works for all the trustees. Been missing folks.
I think we just have to make it a priority.
And I think sometimes it's not, I missed, it was all day. I mean, I was just gone.
Yeah.
I get it.
So not so much the time of the day, it's the day, and then it's just try to work around it, but there's going to be times that.
With only 7 trustees, yeah.
I think we
A
ought
lot
to
of people being
encourage,
absent.
we all also come back into a room and have a meeting. I mean, Zoom is wonderful, but it does not replace actually sitting in a meeting, having a discussion. So I would hope by next month, we're all in attendance at this meeting, and then we'll hopefully make it a little easier for everybody.
And I'd like to get a little bit more focused on our areas as we're looking at them, just to help get my little arms around it.
Are you interested in having us maybe look at some of the tax sale properties that are left in certain areas and we can?
Looking at trying to define a zone area that we're going to work on. Whatever we can accomplish that, we can do that same model to the next area.
Logan, that's what I'd like to see is maybe take and divide this area into smaller bits.
Okay.
And say, what are our goals and objectives for 1A, okay?
Yeah.
And sort of get it down to where we can have a game plan. And then maybe we even take and each one of us go drive through the area before a meeting, but we can say, 812 Mini Green Street is, a house I noticed, boy, there was a lot of trash in the front yard, or it looks like it's about ready to fall down. And then we can dig a little deeper into some of that as to how do we improve that neighborhood? Because I feel like I have to go out and drive and really get a feel for that neighborhood before I can sit in this room and say, hey, what things should we be thinking about?
We joked at the beginning of the meeting about our field trip out. Roger, Logan and I went out and to those target areas and we're driving around and, looking at the properties and taking pictures. It really does help frame what you're thinking in the discussion and what are the assets? Because we're also having conversations with Public Works and Utilities to say, if we're working in a target area, what's in the CIP? What's coming down the pipe? Is there a way we can leverage infrastructure improvements in areas, that we're looking to have some traction in? So, I mean,
That would be my goal. If Logan's appropriate, she's our coordinator now. So that would be what I'd love to see, is for us to put in little smaller pieces and really sit down and talk about it.
4 phases, perhaps.
Yeah, 3-4 pages. And then, like I say, get it out to us ahead of time so we can go up there and drive a little bit and just get a feel for what we're talking about.
Did you say including WHA, Wichita Housing Authority properties along with the tax, so that way we can see the benefit overall? I like that approach as well.
So we'll focus kind of our planning efforts probably around this cluster here in District 1. Maybe
That's a-
all over to 135.
I'd probably shrink it down though, Logan.
We break it up into each area, right?
I like
Yeah.
But just like our overarching, that's really where those 213 housing authority homes are, this cluster right here, and this bunch right here. But we can break it down into smaller areas for sure.
I'd just focus in on that east side,
Yep.
Okay.
and I would focus in on an area, and it would be interesting to visit with Mennonite Housing and get their input on what section do they see as what would they recommend that we look at?
I think if we looked at 13th to 21st and north of 21st Street and south of 13th Street, those would be the 3 I'd probably start with. And then maybe have Mennonite Housing and some of those give some input as to
Where's Rock the Block at on there?
This area. 13 tonight.
Grove to,
They've already got some momentum. We ought to just continue that and hit that. I'd say Rock the Block.
and they've absolutely expressed interest in those WHA homes that are in the Rock the Block area. Because I mean, they're up to what, 57, I think? Homes that they've built in that small area.
Okay, so how can we complement and add to what they're doing? Rock the block.
I think I know a donor that was wanting to donate 250,000 to where they could basically provide loans for people to buy it, not charging anything for it, just to enable that ownership to continue what they're doing, but they can't buy houses because it's tied up with HUD.
Those other ones, but then, you know, and Fox, former from Habitat, was here at our last meeting, and this is something we'll have to actually take into consideration. Is she has said that all of the vacant lots that are in this area have skyrocketed in price because people know what they're doing. And if they can get their hands on a vacant lot, they're holding it and holding them for ransom in essence. So we could also fall into that if we start publicly identifying that we are looking at, you know, parcels in particular neighborhoods. We're going to see them swooped up and people really jacking the prices up. So it's just something to be.
Maybe we look at the back taxes in there.
Yeah, there aren't much. There's
Very few.
at this point.
Some of those, I think if we had a plan, then there's a reason for us to do something. But maybe there's a reason the land bank to buy some of those vacant ground and sell them to Habitat for Humanity so they can build. I know that's a very good option. So in that case,
I would certainly definitely take a closer look at this area, maybe break down a couple other areas too, to get you some information related to what the neighborhood is, what the community. We've gotten in front of almost all of these neighborhood associations as part of our public engagement process for the Affordable Housing Fund. So we've started to have conversations with residents about what they might start to see happening in the neighborhood. But we can do further engagement as well to see what they'd like to see. That.
Great, thank you, Logan. The other thing that I'd like to see, Kansas State Legislature right now is looking at different programs for affordable housing. The governor talked about $50 million for affordable housing. I have no idea what that really means.
The majority of which is for rural Kansas.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that my question is, what does that mean for Wichita? The other one is Sparks. There's numerous requests in the Sparks Committee for affordable housing. What does that mean? How does that affect us? So if that, Logan, in your spare time, you can do a little research on that. And I will do some checking on the foreclosure state statute and county procedures and title insurance issues.
Thank you.
Anything else for committee for the meeting? If not, I move we adjourn. Get a second? All in favor, say aye. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your dedication to this. We really appreciate it.
Meeting is Wednesday, May 11th at 1:30.
Thank you. Now you're gonna send over
The affordable housing plan, and we'll send the meeting minutes as well. And then we'll work towards putting together that guide. That we,
You get Jeff's updates, you'll send all that out.
yes, as well as, we'll send those probably sooner than the rest of the stuff.
What is this?
Spark is the,
Okay.
it's the federal funds that the state's getting.
person owns a lot of Texas lots, so all it glitters is not gold, that's right. One time, a saltwater disposal well on it, like the square.